Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the West Newbury Conservation Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. Reminder that persons who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress may do so by use of Zoom. Link to meeting found on West Newbury Conservation webpage on the March 15th, 2021 agenda, or by calling in at 1-646-558-8656, passcode 640280, meeting ID 811-485-99065. Okay, first on the agenda is a public hearing on the proposal of a wetlands protection bylaw. So are there any members of the public who would like to speak?
I guess not. Judy, can we, if there's no one from the public that would like to speak, do you want to, do you have a list of the questions that came from the Selectman's office?
I don't have them with me.
I can get them right now.
Okay, thank you, Bert.
This is Elisa Grammer. I just wanted to let you know that Fred Chinani is leaving another meeting and will join soon and may have something to say from the tree committee.
Okay, thank you.
Alyssa, I didn't hear who is joining.
Someone named Fred Shananya, who is the chairperson of the tree committee.
Ah, okay.
He lives in this house.
Okay. The questions were in the article request questioning whether there were no ancillary costs. So Bert is going to check with the towns that have bylaws to see if they noticed any increase in time required or numbers of permits. I mean, it seems to me that most of the projects would have to file anyway. Then questions in no particular order were why is a butter notification of all within 300 feet of the boundary rather than 100 feet as in the Wetlands Protection Act? What are intermittent creeks or brooks? And the Wetlands Protection Act doesn't require 200 feet setbacks.
Judy, should we address each of these before you? I mean,
Well,
I would like to, yeah,
I think the intent is to answer them, right?
yes, I agree.
all right.
These, most of these regulations, weren't they taken from other towns, the surrounding towns or towns that are similar to us?
Yes, and they were also taken from the MAC, Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commission's model bylaw.
Okay.
A butter notification is increased. It gives more people notice and the ability to participate. Intermittent creeks or brooks are streams as defined in the Wetlands Protection Act. And the bylaw increases the setback to 200 feet, classifying them as in the same manner as rivers are classified in the Wetlands Protection Act. The bylaw is not limited to the limitations of the Wetlands Protection Act. In fact, the purpose of having a bylaw is to allow more flexibility and increase protections. I don't have a list of exceptions in the Wetlands Protection Act.
I'm not sure what that question means, Judy. Do you know? All exceptions are not valid.
There is a part of the bylaw that mentioned exceptions.
The says the section 3 of the bylaw says that other than stated in this bylaw, the exceptions provided in the Wetlands Protection Act and regulations shall not apply under this bylaw. We could put together a list and post it on the website.
Okay.
For a wildlife or plant consultant, fee must be paid in full in 20 days or the permit is denied. That sounds a little draconian. Who decides a consultant is needed if not delineated on state maps? Not quite sure what that means. Sounds subjective.
Well, can't we request a wildlife consultant for any project?
Yeah, since we've passed that policy, we can, right?
Yeah, but it's not required under the Wetlands Protection Act for all projects.
But it's not required under the bylaw either, is it?
It's not required. It's saying that the commission would have the option of requiring one. Would have the discretion to require one. The other part of that is that a question as to why the fees must be paid in full in 20 days.
Well, what's typical practice?
Well, since this came from the
A boilerplate?
either the draft MACC draft or local communities, that's where the 20 days came from. So I'm assuming that that would be local practice.
Okay.
Minimum pond size was downsized from the state size of 10,000 square feet. Why? In order to provide protection for smaller bodies of water. Wet fields or vernal pool water cover was shortened from 5 months to 2 months. A little ice on a field could easily disqualify a site with that change. Why? Well, first of all, I'm not sure that that's accurate.
Well, I think that also the bylaw states we would have to find breeding activity of amphibians.
Right.
And
It's
that's
more-
not going to happen in a wet field.
Or with a little ice on the
Right.
field.
I think just clarifying, I mean, it's in the bylaw, but I think also noting that if we didn't find obligate species breeding, it couldn't be classified as a vernal pool.
Right.
So I think, I don't know, I think that just needs to be explained to whoever had this question.
Right.
Is it possible for me to comment on that?
Sure. Who are you?
This is Fred Shinanya. We have a wet field out back. It is a designated wetland, and we do have amphibians breeding there. So one might call that a wet field unless that takes it, if it's a wet field but not a designated wetland, then I would sort of disagree with the observation that they're not amphibians, because they actually they are found there.
I think this is with respect to vernal pool habitat though, which
An
is something
obligate
that-
species. So we
Yeah.
have a list of particular animals that we would have to find.
And a vernal pool is defined as any confined basin or depression not occurring in existing lawns, gardens, landscaped areas, or driveways, which at least in most years holds water for a minimum of 2 continuous months during the spring and or summer, contains at least 200 cubic feet of water at some time during most years, is free of adult predatory fish populations, and provides essential breeding and rearing habitat functions for amphibian, reptile, or other vernal pool community species.
I do understand the difference very well. The conjunction is or in that statement. So that's what I'm saying is it would appear to also address wet fields that are not vernal pools. I don't know what the comment's all about. I understand that wet fields are not vernal pools.
Okay.
Well, so is this something from the comment or from the bylaw, this mention of wet fields?
No, that's from the comments.
Yeah, okay, so that's the issue. They're just conflating the two.
What I read as the definition of the vernal pool is from the bylaw.
Yeah, okay.
That was the last question.
So Bert, was Angus looking for us to respond in writing to these or to just address them when we schedule a
He
time?
didn't specify. Definitely wanted them addressed at least, so I can write up responses that we just went over and send it to him either way.
Okay.
Thank you, Bert.
And do we still need to book time to discuss this with the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, that was another thing that he asked if we could schedule a time to do that. He had, let me pull up the email.
I think he was proposing the April 12th Board of Selectmen meeting.
Okay,
That's in the back.
Oh, it is on there. Okay, so it's just looking for. So he's actually looking at March 29th. So he had a follow-up email that's not on there.
Okay.
So he had asked about the March 29th bylaw or Board of Selectmen meeting.
well, that works, right? Because we don't have a meeting.
Yeah, we don't have a meeting that night.
Okay.
So March 29th, I can tell him is good.
Yep.
Yeah, just see if you can get a time estimate when on the agenda.
Yep.
Thank you.
So is there anyone else that's on this meeting that would like to speak concerning this bylaw?
Yes, this is Fred Shinanya. I would be happy to.
Would you give your address, please?
47 Coffin Street, West Newbury, also home of Elisa Grammer.
Thank you.
Basically, I think the bylaw is terrific, long needed, well designed, well written. And with respect to trees, I was very pleased to see that it covered trees and tree damage, and in I think a constructive way. I had two questions or points of clarification. And I missed the part about sort of the plant consultant, but as concerns trees, if the consultant for plants, so I'm not sure what the definition is being hired or used for tree matters, it should be a certified arborist. A certified arborist has many more skills and knowledge bases than a plant consultant, which is ill-defined might. I don't know if that fits in, but that's just a comment that I had on that wording. More to the point, the only thing that I was a little bit unclear about, I think it's covered, but I would prefer a little more specificity, is the damage that occurs during construction activities to trees. So for example, driving large vehicles or equipment, or having equipment lay down areas underneath trees, especially in wet areas, is create soil compaction. And that's probably the #1 killer of trees related to construction type activities that occurs. And the problem with that, unless it is clearly specified, is that you don't see that damage for 5 to 10 years afterwards, but the tree is damaged irrevocably during the construction. So my comment on the language in the bylaw is, I think it's covered as I read it, the idea of construction damage, but it might be better to reference that wording specifically, or adding it in specifically. And part of the reason is that the tree committee has developed at least a draft of construction damage do's and don'ts, guidance on that. And so it would be easy for the Conservation Commission wouldn't essentially have to do any work. If you were interested in using that guidance as something for the people that would be subject to the bylaws. Again, it's guidance documents from us. But anyway, that was all. I congratulate you on what I think is a really significant advancement. And from the tree committee perspective, I was really happy to see that trees are in fact covered within, I guess, within the buffer zone.
Fred, I have a question for you. Could you send Bert a copy of your guidance, of the tree committee's guidance?
Yes, I'm trying to remember. I think the committee has approved the guidance. So let me just double check, because I can send it to them as a draft if need be, but I believe that we have considered the draft and we have adopted it, but we haven't put it out yet, if you will, to any particular boards. But I'd be happy to send it to Bert and to work with him on any of the concepts there.
Thanks. And is there a way of telling whether there is damage to trees? You said it could occur 5 or 10 years out. Is there a way of, we can't say come back in 5 years?
No, unless you're doing something like trenching, where you're cutting roots,
Yeah.
that's pretty obvious. Unless you're bashing a tree trunk with equipment and creating a wound, that's pretty obvious. Of course, the fixed it, but either one of those is really hard to do. As I said, most of the issue has to do with soil compaction. And so, for example, parking, it's really great if you're working on a site and you want to park your truck under a tree so it's in shade. Well, that's going to definitely hurt the root system of that tree. So you really cannot, it's all preventive measures, like how to avoid construction damage, as opposed to saying, here's what it looks like and we can fix it, because you really can't.
The same principle for wetlands, don't fill.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great parallel.
So it's avoidance first.
Yeah, or for example, changing the hydrology.
Yeah.
Well, I think this came up a little bit on our site walk this weekend too, when we're talking about the directional drilling through the wetland for pipes and how that's less invasive. So, I mean, it's kind of an interesting new technology that keeps.
And maybe since you mentioned site walks, just so you'll know, I'm going to be making a presentation at some point in the next month or so to the planning board, and we certainly will be volunteering to go along. I've already gone on one site walk with the planning board, and I'd be happy to have myself or maybe a member of the committee accompany either Bert or the commission if you're doing site walks to take a look at the trees.
Okay, well, thank you. Anything else on the bylaw?
Hello, this is Kathy Theory, 540 Main Street.
Hi.
Hi, I just wanted to say I had been following the fact that you were doing a bylaw, and I was really pleased with how it came out. I shared it with my daughter, who's a environmental law student, and she thought it was very well written. So that's all I wanted to say is just that I'm glad you guys are doing this.
Well, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, then we will continue with the agenda. The Lower Artichoke Spillway has been continued.
Judy, before we do that, maybe we should tell people that this is also being recorded by the town.
Okay, this meeting is being recorded by the town. Hazard tree management has been continued. The Artichoke River Bridge has been continued. Next is the Pentucket Regional School District construction of the maintenance garage and parking area. Request for determination of applicability. Tracy, are you here?
Yes, she is. Unmute yourself, Tracy.
Sorry about the name. It's Tracy Peter. So I'm here for continued public hearing. Was asked if we would please do the calculation for isolated land subject to flooding for the area just to the, as you can see, to the west of, as you're looking at the map, that puddle area, depression area located off the property site. And so let's see, one thing that I wanted to make sure people understood is that there is no bordering land subject to flooding on the property or even the adjacent property, which we were analyzing in this case. And so there's an Exhibit A, which shows spot grades on the plan that was originally provided, but I found a plan that had the spot grades in detail. And from there, I blew them up and created Exhibits A and BB, showing you these spot grade elevations, which I ended up using in the calculation for the isolated land subject to flooding. I've also referenced the Wetlands Protection Act regulations for isolated land subject to flooding and the Division of Wetlands and Waterways policy number, which was revised in 1995. And then Exhibit C is the actual calculation that was used for determining isolated land subject to flooding. And in this particular case, I found, I want to bring up the fact that on page 2, there were a couple of typos. And the first one is down where you see 2,260 cubic feet over the acre feet. It should be square feet, not cubic feet. Underneath that long equation that starts with a V, it should be square feet for the acre.
Bert, can you show that what she's speaking of so we can see
And so
that?
that should be square feet in the next line too.
The after A and H, then it's V, and after that there's 2,260 cubic feet over, and that's the acreage. Square
Right.
feet.
And so the
It
next
says
line,
cubic feet, so just change it to square feet.
yeah, and in the next line, it says 2,260 cubic feet over 43,560 cubic feet. Should those be square feet as well?
No, just for the acre. The next with the one that 2,260 cubic feet over 43,560 square feet. Just change it to square feet over acre. And then the second one down after that, I don't know if my computer auto corrected, but mills is isolated land subject to flooding.
Yep.
So what I did is I broke down, I had to determine where the berm was. So let me just look at.
Is that an existing berm?
That's where the water accumulates behind that. It's not a berm. It was the area where the elevations change and drop off. You could see there's it's
Right.
pretty much contained above the berm, and then it drops off to 24.8 from 25 feet, 24.8, and then it jumps down to 24.5, and then after that, there's the contour for 24. So I was trying to be conservative, and I calculated the volume of water contained behind that line that I labeled berm. And from there, I took the calculations measuring the lowest elevation inside Exhibit B would be 24.6. And that would be one elevation, and the upper elevation would be 25 feet. And I calculated all of the total square foot area from the berm north, and it came out to be 10,900 square feet, area under contour 25. And the area within contour 24.6 is 400 square feet. And the difference of elevation between the two is 4.4 feet. And there we plug it into that equation. A plus A times 0.4 over 2 equals 2,260 cubic feet. And then divide that by the acreage, square foot acreage, and you get the acre feet. 0.052 acre feet, which is way less than the 0.225 acre feet, less than a quarter acre foot.
And the area south of the berm is not a contained basin?
No, that's where it would flow out.
Hmm.
Where we see the puddle when you go, it's right in the, it looks like a dog's head if you look at the 25-foot contour. It's all in that section. And I've been out there twice in the last couple of weeks, and it's a small flooded area right in there.
So north of the berm?
Yes.
Okay. You been out there?
No.
Well, based on these calculations, are you still prepared to, your request for determination included a description of the work as putting erosion controls along the lot lines. Are you still proposing to do that?
Yes.
Loaming and seeding?
That would make sense. That is proposed. There'll be trees planted. Now the applicant has originally had moved the building further away from this area in question. And I don't know if it's necessary. Which plan, does it matter? As long as there's erosion control placed right on the property line. There's going to be a fence installed there as well.
This is Bob Danforth from Pawtucket Regional School District. He's helping us with this, and yeah, there's Barbara doesn't want any tree line down. We proposed a tree line and a fence line down the lot line and with arborvitaes, and she doesn't want the arborvitaes because of the deer issues. They said eventually they'll be all eaten up and everything else like that. So we're proposing a cedar 8-foot stockade fence down the line, whatever the planning board recommends off the line. And we can do it during the middle of summer when there's no puddles or anything. That's fine. If you guys have any questions for me.
Is the building, I'm looking at a plan that is dated March 12th, 2020, which locates the building. Oh, that's the new one. Oh. So
We moved the building almost 40 feet away. We're right against I mean, we moved it way away from there. I can give you some calculations right now.
I think it was in the original filing, actually. I have it
It
attached.
was,
now.
yeah. But we're 50 feet off the property line with the building.
Okay, I'm just thinking, the plan, the earlier plan showed the building further away from the wet area. And now this plan, you've moved it closer to the wet area, is that it?
No, I don't think she, that's an old plan.
Yes, that's not what
Yeah,
was submitted.
she's just showing it, that's all. She's showing the topos on that, that's all.
Are you looking at the, oh, I see, you're looking at the large
So Tracy, this was the full-size plan that you
Plan
submitted.
A. You're
Yeah.
looking at Plan A. It's been changed since then.
Right,
The big,
exactly.
this Plan A. I submitted that to the commission, but the actual building itself is in the original RDA. There are copies of it. They moved almost to the property edge, the other side, near where the
Yeah.
bleachers are.
Yes,
And with a driveway coming in along the side of the building. So, and the building would be 50 feet from the property line. And there would be a 20-foot wide driveway coming in.
along the side of the building,
Yeah,
Mhm.
going out back to the other back of the building.
And the driveway is what type of material?
We're proposing gravel right now. Right now, we got a limited budget. We'd like to pave it eventually, but you know, we're trying to do it without raising taxpayers' money and all this stuff. So we got it proposed as gravel for now, and then eventually paving. If you wanted to, I think first time we or whatever in front of the building, coming in off the driveway and to the front of the building, there's a garage, will be a garage door and a walk-in door where the cars park. If you want that paved, we have enough money to pave that.
Well,
So
I'm-
which plan, Judy, which plan? It seems like there's more than one plan here. I want to make sure we have one final plan.
The one that's up on the screen right now, with where the green line is, you see the green line?
Yeah,
That would be the proposed driveway coming in, and then the red line, I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of red lines, but it's right up against where the bleachers used to be. And that would be our building. And then there'd be a 20-foot driveway around, and then a 50 by 50 out back for equipment.
Okay, and this plan that we're looking at is dated March 12th, is that right?
Yes.
There is one other plan. So we submitted
I'm not
two.
sure. I don't have the date on it.
There's another one, Bert?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there was 3 total. Let me pull up the,
There was one without, that did not show the green driveway area. The one that was actually submitted with the RDA.
And this is also, what is the date on this one?
It's also March 12th of
Oh.
20.
Okay,
I think we need one plan so there's no confusion later on.
Oh, absolutely. No, I just.
And I would also like to see the calculations of the, that Tracy was discussing on the plan instead of in a separate letter attachment. I feel like that's something an engineer typically would do.
I'm
That's fine.
sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
typically those kinds of calculations, I think, would be on the plan that's submitted. There'd be like a, you know, a box or something that would explain the calculations or list the,
Well, the calculation is for the determination, to determine whether it
Right.
meets isolated land subject to flooding, but it does not.
right, but I would like to see that on the plan and have it stamped. I mean, is that something that, is this Donahue survey? Could they do that?
I've never heard of a request like that. This is a request for determination. It's not a notice of intent.
Right, but we're making a decision based on the land not being, not qualifying, right? So I feel like that needs to be documented a little bit, you know, in a way that's attached to this particular plan.
Well,
Uh,
the plan was
I-
done by others.
Plan was, yes, and Tracy was nice enough to help us out to try to get it through the conservation.
I think what's hard for us is it shows a wetland, but it doesn't really tell us anything about the wetland.
Well, no,
It's not a
actually,
wetland, it's a
saying it's
non-isolated
not.
land subject to flooding.
Right, but
Issue.
that's not on the plan. I think that's what our problem is.
Well, it is on the plan. You can see the,
We can
She
see the
just-
wetland, but we don't have a description, do we, on this plan? Anywhere?
well, it's not part of the project site. That's the problem.
Yes, that's not our
It's a
plan.
different owner where the puddle is. The garage is owned by the Pawtucket Regional School System.
Exactly.
But you're showing that area on this plan, right? And it does indicate wetland by, you know, the symbols and so forth. So it just seems like it would be more clear if there was some kind of, you know, designation that the calculations were done, here they are, and they show that it's not subject.
So you want that on the plan that Donahue put
Yeah,
together?
I think we need something more formal, you know?
Well,
The planning board has approved that plan with the elevations. I understand. Is that true, Bob?
All I know is the planning board asked for a determination of where the building was going. It's all one parcel right now, so. It's the same parcel as the high school right now. Because we bought that place. We bought it off of Barbara Burkham.
Right.
And now it's all one parcel, so.
why do you feel that the submission with the plans with the elevations are not sufficient? We could staple them to the request.
I'm sorry,
Are you asking?
I couldn't quite hear you, so.
I was just wondering, I mean, I am just questioning why the plans that were submitted, the additional information is not sufficient, why we can't just attach it to the plan we have, since, unless you're questioning the calculations.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a chance to look at them. I mean, it seems to me that this is not, is this typically something a wetland scientist would do, or would a PE do this kind of thing?
A wetland scientist would do this.
And I mean, and we're working on a limited budget, so that's why we hired Tracy. She agreed to help us to do this.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna make a motion anyhow, and we can discuss it. I move that we issue a negative determination based on the material submitted, with the condition that the description, that the work be done as proposed in the request for determination of applicability, including erosion controls along the lot lines to be inspected and approved by the conservation agency for construction. A fence be erected along the northeast side of the property line, and disturbed areas to be loamed and seeded after construction.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I'm not entirely comfortable with the calculations. So I'm not sure how to resolve this. Is this something that has to be decided tonight?
Well,
I'm asked,
nope, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
You asking somebody else? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead and speak to it. I'm just wondering how urgent this is to get this finalized.
It's pretty urgent right now because our old building got torn down and all our equipment and everything is there. It's pretty much outside, and then and we only have 8 to 10 months to get this up and going. And where we are now will be torn down because the project's going pretty well and everything else. So we're in a time crunch, that's all. And plus building products have gone up big time and everything and all that stuff,
Yeah,
so-
no, so could it wait for 2 weeks till our next meeting?
Yeah, I mean, 2 weeks is fine. Yes, definitely. I mean, yep. I mean, I still have to go to the planning board, which Sam asked you and you guys did too, which is, that's fine. But it's, I want to work with you guys and, I don't want to, I'm trying not to pull anything over your guy's head or anything. I just trying to get it through and going through and get it done. That's all.
Sure, no, we totally understand that.
Yep.
It just seems to me that when we've considered these kinds of, or any kind of wetlands, that it's part of the submitted plan.
Yep.
And so I would like to look back at the Wetlands Protection Act and see what the requirements are for demonstrating that this does not qualify.
Yeah, I mean.
And make sure there's not a.
Well, it is part of the determination that was filed.
And don't forget, I mean, the wetlands is not on our property, so,
Right.
Yep. And I mean, we moved the building back quite a bit, so that's all.
I appreciate that, but whether it's on your property or not is not really.
Oh, I understand. I used to be a builder in Grove. So I understand that. So I don't think I'm trying to pull something fast over here.
No, I don't.
No. Okay. So I mean, I'm the chairman of the Groveland Planning Board, so so I know how it goes. So I just want everybody to be happy and make sure everybody understands what we're trying to do here and how it goes. And
All right, well then, I will draw the motion.
if you could see on the old plan, that's where our building was, right by the street, which we had no issues with, and now we're just sliding it back, and we bought that piece for the Birkin bushes, and we're just with the new building and everything else, we take care of 6 schools. Well, it will be probably it still be 6 schools, but facilities have grown, and we do a lot of in-house work now. So that's why the buildings we found out that we can do it cheaper, in-house than, so that's the only reason why the building's getting bigger. Plus the fields and everything else to keep it nice.
Okay, so Judy, you're going to withdraw the motion
I will withdraw the motion.
and we'll revisit this in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Is it gonna be a site view or anything? You guys gonna walk it? You guys want a site view or anything?
We've walked this.
Bert, have you been out there recently?
Not recently.
Could you, I mean, can you see it from the property or do you have to get permission to go on the Birkenbushes?
I mean, no, it's
From the-
our site, no problem.
No, but that's what I should say. But I believe it's still staked, right?
It is still staked, yes.
Yeah, so I can see it from the Pentucket property.
Okay,
If I
Did
have
you
it.
check the
Bert,
soils
Bert,
when
if
you guys went out?
If you wanted to walk it with me, let me know. I'll walk it with you anytime.
Okay.
Did you check the soils the first time you guys did a site walk there?
No. I don't think we did. Did we, Bert? No.
We were out there with Rich Kirby from LEC when they were permitting the new school. I thought we did check the soils.
I can't remember.
But I mean, the question is whether it's large enough to qualify as isolated land subject to flooding. It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
no matter what the soils are in for that definition.
All right,
Just
so
because I
Bert-
don't know. I mean, I think we're using the contours, right, to define the wetland in the calculation
No, it's for the flooding.
for the flooding.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so Bert, you're gonna go take a look at this and then we'll revisit it in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you.
and Bert, is the submittals in the Google Drive folder for this?
Yes, they are.
The ones that Tracy was discussing?
Yep.
Okay,
They're-
okay.
Bert, when you walk, can you give me a call and
Yeah, I'll give you a call.
just call the facilities. I'd like to walk it with you.
All right, we'll do.
Thank you.
Thank
Bob,
you.
I just had one other question before you go. Your preference is to pave it, but you're gonna use gravel to begin with. Is that correct?
Well, yes, I mean, if you want the driveway paved from the road in and the parking for probably 3 to 4 cars, I'll pave that in front of the building, yes. But around the building right now and behind the building was gravel.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, great, thank
Okay.
you. Yep.
What's on the agenda next?
Middle Street,
So the applicant had just requested a continuance for both those notice of intent. So for Middle Street Lot A and Lot B, they've requested a continuance.
next on the agenda is continued public hearing for 519 Main Street.
Hello, Madam Chair, for the applicant, Chris Sparagus from the Engineering and Survey Office of Williams and Sparagus. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep,
Yeah.
thanks, Chris, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. We were last before the commission not that long ago, and there were a couple of requests that were made. Number one was the commission members asked us to respond to a letter from an abutter from Miss Valerie Gingrich. And we were able to do that back at the beginning of February. We also finalized our plan revisions and our back and forth on the peer review design with Meridian. We've had a couple of planning board meetings since the last time we met, and we're making good progress with the planning board. And also, since the last time that we met, we also received comments from DEP. There were 3 comments that we responded to in writing, and we submitted a response to DEP in writing back on February 26th, and we copied the commission on that. And I can go through the responses, the comments from DEP and the responses if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Just pull up that letter here so that I can refer to it. So there were 3 comments from DEP. Number 1 had to do with stormwater details. The comment was that the stormwater details are insufficient for a constructed wetland basin. And there was a reference made to the Stormwater Handbook, Volume 2, Chapter 2, pages 36 through 48. And so what we did, these are, if you recall, they're very small and shallow constructed wetland basins located on either side of the proposed roadway near the entrance to the project. And during our site visit, we kind of showed you where they were and how shallow they would be. Oftentimes for constructed stormwater wetlands like this, we don't go in and do all the heavy duty, intricate work inside the basin to create micro pools in high and low marsh areas, because there isn't a lot of room to do that. But it was a question that was raised by Ms. Gingrich, and DEP commented on it as well. And so we decided to take a close look at them, and we actually provided the detail. And if we, looking at the screen here, if we were to go to the detail sheet, it'll become obvious as you get down to the detail sheet which one it is.
13.
The detail, keep going.
I think it's
13.
Thank you. So here's the detail that we provided. We added another sheet to the plan set, and we actually added in details on the sediment trap forebays for these small pocket wetlands, the micro pools, and you can see the little finger projections in the bottom of the constructed pocket wetland. Those represent our delineation of high and low marsh areas, and so we do our volume calculations based on an even contour. And then the handbook explains that you would then create ins and outs. And what this allows you to do is when the water comes into the basin, it follows a more circuitous path back and forth, going from the in to the out. And so it lengthens the detention time inside the pocket wetland before the water leaves the basin, providing for additional treatment and detention time in the stormwater management area. And so we did this for each of the 3 pocket wetland areas to address that comment from DEP. And that was their comment number 1. If we could go back in the plan set now to the plan and profile sheet, which is sheet 10 of 15, that's going to be the next comment review. So the next comment from DEP was need details on proposed wetland replication, and it referred to the Mass DEP inland wetland replication guidance. And so you may recall that near the entrance to the project, due to the location of the wetland and the position of the roadway, we have a small proposed wetland fill in the area where there's the open meadow. It was the area that's mowed regularly as you're coming in on the existing driveway. On the left-hand side, we have a proposed 260 square foot wetland fill proposed, and we've minimized that proposed fill by building a retaining wall along the edge of the activity. But we didn't detail exactly how the replication area was going to be built, and we just referred to it. It was such a small area. But what we did on this sheet, you can see the bubbled area near the top of the plan there. And if we were to zoom in a little bit on that, there are some words to the left of that clouded bubble, and the clouded bubble itself shows how we intend to replicate that area. And you can see in the clouded wetland replication area detail plan, there are, it's a 10 scale blow up of the replication area, and it shows the retaining wall, and it shows how we intend to dig down a little bit to create the same sort of elevation profile across the replication area. It's very shallow to begin with, and all we're doing is taking it down a little bit just to sort of match the elevations along the wetland flags in the back. And then we detail that we would over excavate and place 12 inches of material in the bottom of the replication area, making sure that it's a low permeability soil mixture consisting of 2 parts of granular soil, 2 parts soil with a USCS designation of ML, and 1 part of well pulverized composted leaf mulch. And then we show the gradation chart for the granular soil wetland mixture. And then we proposed to replicate the meadow conditions, simply planting that area after it's prepared with a New England wetland seed mix at a ratio that New England wetland seed mix folks recommend for this particular seed mix. It's 1 pound per 2,500 square feet of an application rate, and then that will take care of itself. And so that addresses the response to DP's comment number 2. DP's comment number 3 reads as follows. A 401 water quality certificate is required on wetland fill in a subdivision real estate. And we responded, and let me read our response, and it kind of explains why in this case, a water quality certification application is not required if you do certain things. And so we refer to the section of the CMR, it's 314 CMR 9.043. It says that it requires a 401 water quality certification application for fill materials associated with the creation of real estate subdivisions, unless there is a valid, unexpired final order of conditions, followed by a certificate of compliance and a recorded deed restriction, providing notice to subsequent purchasers limiting the amount of wetland fill to the single and complete project to less than 5,000 square feet cumulatively of bordering under isolated vegetative wetland and land underwater, and discharge is not to an outstanding resource water. And so that's a lot of legalese, right? So basically what this says is that if the Conservation Commission agrees to issue an order of conditions allowing our project, we'll have a valid order of conditions. And then obviously the applicant has every intention to complete the project in accordance with the approved plans, and then request a certificate of compliance after the work is completed. In addition, the applicant plans to file a deed restriction, and the deed restriction is going to limit any future filling on the entire property as described in that section of that 314 CMR. Finally, the proposed filling activity that we're showing near the front of the property there is not associated with an outstanding resource water. And for all of those reasons, a 401 water quality certification application will not be needed in this case. And so the reason why DP is very careful about real estate subdivisions is that if you don't put that deed restriction on, another lot owner in the future could come in and ask, let's say he had a wetland on his property, they could come in and ask for a wetland fill on their property, and then the next person could do the same thing, and so on and so on. You can see in a large subdivision of 20 or 30 lots, it could get out of hand pretty quick. And the intent of that section in the Wetlands Protection Act that allows the commission discretion to allow a certain amount of wetland filling, but not to exceed 5,000 square feet. This is a way that DP protects real estate subdivisions. So we have, again, every intention on preparing that deed restriction, and we've done several of them through the years. So that's how we responded to DP's comments. And we included the commission as a CC on that. and obviously the applicant and their attorney as well. So, we've completed our back and forth with Meridian. In fact, we just received their latest updated letter today, and I was able to read it quickly before the meeting tonight. And they found a couple of typos that they wanted us to clean up on sheet 7 of 15. In our list of notes, we list an item number 5 twice in our list of notes. So we're going to fix that. And then on that same sheet that we're looking at right now, we show an 8-inch pipe that ties into a catch basin, and there was a typo on the elevation of the pipe, so we need to fix that. But those are the only 2 remaining items that Meridian identified in the letter that was issued as today. We responded to the DP comments. We've issued a response letter to Mrs. Gingrich's letter, and I know the last time we were with the commission on the property was back around Christmas time, just after the 25th and the 27th. And so that brings us to today, and that's my update for the commission. And if you folks have any additional questions, so that's why we're here tonight.
Well, thank you. I do have some questions. On your stormwater modeling methodology, you said you were using TR20 and TR55 and other hydraulic calculation methods. Did you look at the Cornell rainwater, Cornell data?
Let's take a look. I don't believe that we used the Cornell data for the stormwater report. The rainfall data, I believe that we used. Let me take a look here real quick. I could tell you quickly by looking at our stormwater report. And I can quickly scan. Jump into our rainfall data page here. So 3.1, 4.5, and 6.5. So Ms. Meisner, the 3 storms that we analyzed are the 2-year, the 10-year, and the 100-year.
Yeah.
To comply with DEP's stormwater handbook. And the rainfall amount for the 2-year that we ran with is 3.1 inches. The 10-year rainfall is 4.5, and the 100-year is 6.5. I don't believe those are the Cornell numbers. That's something that's not required by the stormwater management handbook.
I was just wondering, the last time I looked a while ago, I thought that the Cornell numbers were somewhat larger than the TR20 and 55.
Yes, I believe you are correct.
Do you know how much larger?
I don't have it handy. I did a quick Google search here just to see if I could pull something up really quick. But it doesn't look like I'm going to find it quickly enough for you.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was significant enough to make a difference.
So typically not that significant, in our experience. So let's put it this way: if we were at the beginning of the project and we were talking to the commission about something, or a planning board, sometimes we'll get it from a peer review consultant. And they say, hey, I know you're using the numbers from the technical paper 40 and that DP hasn't, officially accepted or adopted these other numbers, but would you be willing to use these other numbers? And we routinely say, yep, that's no problem. We're a little bit down the road. I'm not sure, what would happen if I ran those numbers through the model, if any of the stormwater management areas would have a problem or not. But we'd have to do the analysis to see. One of the things that we try to do, we try not to make our stormwater management areas too much larger than they need to be, because sometimes that involves unnecessary tree clearing and that sort of thing as well. So we try to balance our watersheds so that we're not, reducing the amount of peak runoff too much, obviously not increasing it. We're trying to stay as close to zero Yeah, so I don't know. It wouldn't be that much different. That's been my personal experience.
I mean, I asked because of the 40 numbers, I don't think have been updated in a while. And we, in the last, few years have seen more frequent and larger storm events.
Right. So I guess another way to think about it is that these are, theoretical storm events that that we designed for, and they're based on a typical 24-hour shaped curve that peaks at hour number 12 and then dissipates and heads back to zero after 24 hours. The stormwater management areas, technically they're supposed to be big enough to make sure that we're controlling peak rate of runoff for the 2 and the 10 year. And then for the 100 year, we're supposed to prove that we're not increasing offsite flooding impacts. But we almost always make sure that we're also mitigating the peak rate of runoff for that 100-year storm and making sure that it doesn't overtop the stormwater management areas. So they are designed for a 6.5-inch, rainfall over 24 hours. That's a pretty big rain event. This particular project is relatively small in terms of how DEP looks at projects. We fall into that 5 to 9 unit project category, and it doesn't generate a lot of stormwater runoff as compared to larger projects. And because of that, in this category, DEP doesn't even expect us to meet all of the stormwater standards. They tell us that as long as you meet them to the maximum extent practicable, you're doing your job because it's a relatively small project. So for that reason, I don't think it would make a big difference in this case, because we're not sending a lot of runoff to these stormwater management areas because the watersheds are so small.
Okay. I noticed that you are also decreasing the peak rate of runoff, right?
Yes, that's right. We're decreasing the peak rate of runoff in each of the storm events, but not by a crazy amount. Let's see here, pulling back open the. If you were to look at our stormwater report, there are the way they're set up at the beginning. There are a series of summary tables.
All right, it's 1.8 conclusions on page 5. Is that it?
Yeah, let me just get there. Sorry. Okay, yep. So at each of our points of comparison, there are 3 of them, 1L, 2L, and 3L. And each one of those tables, you can see that for each of the storm events, we're either showing a 0 difference for a peak rate of runoff to a slight decrease in each of the storm events.
What about, are you affecting the ultimate amount of water that is going to be returned to the wetlands over the course of a year?
Right. So I understand what you're saying. So that's a very good question. What we try to do when we're looking at our watersheds, we have our existing watersheds and our proposed watersheds, and then we have our points of comparison, and we try to create proposed watersheds and position stormwater management areas in critical locations so that we're not changing the water budget very much to any location that we're analyzing to, for the reason that you're bringing up. We don't want to increase or decrease too much the amount of runoff that's heading towards these downstream wetlands. We want them to continue functioning the way they function today. We don't want to send a lot more water or not enough water to change what's going on. And so I think we've done a good job of spreading this water out to a number of smaller stormwater management areas, which is an aspect of our, the way we approach the stormwater design in this project, using these low impact development techniques. And one of them is, the main one is decentralizing our stormwater management system. We're not sending all the stormwater to one location, to one big stormwater management area. We're breaking it up to small pieces and sending them off to multiple smaller stormwater management areas. And that goes a long way towards making sure that we keep that balance that you're asking about. So I think we've done a good job doing that, especially in this project.
Is there a table in the stormwater management plan that shows that?
So there's no table that shows that. What's the best way to explain it? We have summary tables for peak rate of runoff, and then each of the basins has a performance summary. The I guess if we were to look at the watershed maps, one could take a look at the existing and proposed watersheds. Take a look at it, in what direction they're flowing, to get an idea of just how much area is going, in these different directions. I think what you would find is that if we looked at those areas, you could get a pretty good feel for existing versus proposed just by looking at the area of how much watershed is going in each direction, and if you could prove that that you're not changing, the amount of area that's going in any one direction, I think that would be one way that you could check that. But we're doing it in these tables using peak flow rate, and the fact that we provided a number of small stormwater management areas positioned throughout the site. I think we have 5 of them on a relatively small project. That's also promoting, one of the other goals of the stormwater handbook is to promote infiltration. But not only that, is that this has evolved over time, that they don't want you just infiltrating in one location or 2 locations. They'd much rather have you infiltrating throughout the site in as many locations as we can. And we're able to do that we have a couple of infiltration basins. We have a nice setup with some infiltration trenches on either side of the proposed roadway, and we have roadside swales. And so that's another way that we're infiltrating water throughout the site and not sending it all to one location. Sometimes that's hard to do when you have pavement and curbing and catch basins all over the place. Really, in this case, the water is not changing the way it flows very much from the existing to the proposed. We're not sending it in new locations. We've honored the existing high point, roughly of where the existing driveways kind of has a high point, and then we're letting water flow left and right across the roadway. There's no curbing, and so this water is entering the ground relatively quickly in the same general areas that it does today.
Are there any questions on this?
More here.
Yeah, I have a question, Chris, while Judy's gathering her thoughts on the 401 water quality certification.
Sure.
You said that one of the conditions for not requiring that is having the order and the COC and the deed restriction, but we won't have any of those things before we say, okay, you don't need the 401. So what, how does that work? Which comes first?
Right. So if the commission agrees to allow the project to move forward, what I would encourage the commission to do is to include as a condition in the order of conditions that a deed restriction be prepared right away and be put on record before any of the lots are deeded out. It's something that really should go on. It could go on right away. And that way, once it goes on record, that's it. And then any subsequent deed out will have that deed restriction on there. So if it's a condition of the order, then it's gonna happen.
Okay, thanks.
The size of your replication area is 1-to-1.
That's
We
correct.
have had at least 1.5 or 2-to-1, given the difficulties of having replication areas work in their entirety.
Sure. I think that in this case, if we were to zoom in, and do you guys typically give control? Can I share my screen, or?
Yeah.
Is it okay to share my screen, Bert?
Let me just make you the.
You become the host.
Okay. You tell me when I'm ready.
You should be good to go.
Okay. Let me go ahead and I'll pull up a PDF, and that way I can zoom right in. So can everybody see the PDF?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to zoom right to this is our topo plan here, and I'll go right to the profile sheet. Let's go there. Okay. So this is the profile sheet, and near the entrance out here is where our proposed replication area is, and we try to position them close to where the fill is. So you can see just to the left here is where the fill is. And so here's the replication area. We can definitely increase the replication area in this direction. And it looks like without much trouble, Ms. Meisner, it looks like we can get to 2-to-1 if that pleases the commission.
That'd be great.
You know, this is an area you may recall, it's very flat down in this area. This is all, you know, open meadow. And that won't be too much trouble at all. This is the 114 contour here that I've drawn in here proposed. So all I'll do is just peel this contour back a little bit, you know, starting let's say over here, and peel it back something like that. And then that'll show the contractor that this area just needs to be dug out a little bit. And then I'll add it. I'm running out of real estate on this sheet of paper, but what we can do, I'll have to find a new home for this guy, but because he's going to get bigger. But I'll figure that out on my end. But we can do that.
That'd be great.
And we're not going to be. Looks like if you remember, there really are no trees over here. So, you know, sometimes we worry about making replication areas bigger than we need to, because when you go out there and you're like, oh my God, we have to cut down these huge trees to create a replication area. But in this case, there aren't any trees over here. It's more of a meadow.
And I think that meadow is a habitat that we have less of and want to keep for various wildlife purposes.
Okay.
On the sheet with sheet 12 that has the stormwater management area profile.
Yes.
For some of them, your proposed grade is below your existing grade, and for some of them, it's above. Can you explain that?
Sure. So it depends on where we happen to be on the landscape, but the biggest reason why that happens. Let me just open this up a little bit again. So we have a couple of different types of stormwater management areas. We have an infiltration basin, which this stormwater management profile through 1P. This is for an infiltration basin. And the one right below it happens to be 3P, which is a constructed stormwater wetland. So for an infiltration basin, DP wants us to position them so that the bottom of the infiltration basin is at least 2 feet above the estimated seasonal high groundwater table. And for a pocket wetland like this, at or near the groundwater table for the bottom is preferred. because you're trying to get different types of vegetation to grow. So in general, that's going to be the reason why you see a difference between why we're able to excavate for some of them, and why on some others we have to kind of keep them up high, because we're trying to maintain that separation from high groundwater to make sure that these are acting more like infiltration basins.
Thanks. And on stormwater management area 7, you have
Okay.
an assumed estimated high water, and the others you have, I assume that you did some kind of soil samples for the others, because it doesn't say assumed. Is that accurate, and what are you assuming?
Yep. So sometimes, depending on where we draw the profile line, they may not intersect with one of the test holes. So let's just take a look at stormwater management area 7P real quick. I'll go back and find him. Let's take a look here. So let's go up one sheet here. So 7P is one of our infiltration basins, and it's located behind lot 2. So here's the roadway cul-de-sac, and lot 2 is back here. It's one of the stormwater management areas that's in the back here, and all it does is it collects some overland flow from the backyard of lot 3 and lot 2. And it looks like the closest test hole data that we have are for some of the test holes that we did for the septic systems. And so we have test hole data along the 106 contour. And so we have test hole P31 on the left here along sort of that contour line. And then we also have test hole T19-10. And so sometimes when we don't have one exactly in the area, we can use some of the other test hole data that's sort of along the same contour in that same vicinity to get an estimated groundwater surface in this area here. Now going back to the detail sheet that shows the profile, let's just take a look. So those other 2 test holes, we had test hole, and it refers to that other test hole, Ms. Meisner, that test hole 19-10, down 36 inches at approximately elevation 100. And we're showing that the bottom of the basin is up at elevation 103, 3 feet, above that elevation 100, where 2 feet is required. And so, we were trying to be, we kind of built in a little bit of a fluff factor here to be a little bit more conservative because we didn't have a test hole exactly within this area. So I think that's a fair assessment, and we kept it an extra foot above our estimated seasonal high groundwater table here in this case.
Thanks. On sheet 8, lot 1.
Yes.
The location of the septic system. Is there a reason that the proposed septic system is closer to the wetlands than the proposed reserve area?
So I believe in the town of West Newbury, we do our grade out, if you will, for both the active and the reserve on our septic design plans. It's a requirement.
Yeah.
We don't do this in every town, but in West Newbury, it's an absolute requirement. I'll be very honest with you. It looks like we have 2 deep holes and 2 perks, in this area down here, and 2 deep holes and 2 perks in this area up here. And it looks like the soils were a little bit more favorable at this lower elevation. And so we're taking advantage of those better soils and place the leaching field using the active area as this lower area here.
Okay, I was just, I was wondering why it was not being reversed, and you've got an answer.
Okay.
I noticed that your note about the trails says that you are giving the easement to Essex County Trail Association. Is there a reason you're doing that rather than giving it to the town?
Yes, and it's really a matter of when Mr. Crow, who represents the ownership of the properties, purchased the properties, he knew that it also came with an existing trail and trail easement. Here's a blow up of that little sketch on our index sheet. And you can see in the very dark outer line is sort of our perimeter. You know, it's quite large. It's just odd shaped. It's been picked apart through the years. Here's the power company easement. And over on this this additional lot that Mr. Crow purchased from that used to be part of what's now the Gingrich property over here. This is an existing trail easement that starts back on the Gingrich property and then it crosses over onto Mr. Crow's property. It's an existing easement that runs right to here. And this is currently maintained. It was an easement that was granted to Essex County Trails. And so Mr. Crow thought it would make the most sense. We reached out to them and they're interested in maintaining the rest of these trails. And so that's how that came about.
Okay, thanks. I think that's the end of my questions right now. Anyone else have any questions?
No.
Would it be appropriate if I asked a question? This is Fred Shinanya.
Sure.
Chris, when I was with you on the site walk in December, I'm just asking if something has changed about the entrance, the location of the entrance to the driveway. It seemed like it might have been moved more to the east where the existing entrance is, if I'm seeing the plans correctly, than when we were there in December. But perhaps that's just, I'm not quite understanding. And the reason, of course, is there are a couple large trees there to the western side of the proposed driveway.
Right. I can tell you that it has not changed
Okay.
since that time, and because our hands are a little bit handcuffed because of the way we have to position the right of way and center it on this narrow strip
Right.
here. And unfortunately, as I mentioned during the site walk out there, there are a couple of trees out in the front here, and they're going to have to be taken down in order to accommodate the construction of the road and the stormwater management area out here.
Okay. Thank you. That's really all.
Okay.
I guess what I would propose is, I think that this, since it's a subdivision, there are, with replication area and maintenance provisions, that maybe it would be good to draft an order of conditions and circulate it, and then actually have a vote in 2 weeks. That works?
Are you asking me?
Asking you.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like a great idea.
Okay, and you can, in the meantime, get a revision for the replication.
Yeah, we'll be happy to. And I'll just, when you flip to the plan and profile sheet next time, don't be surprised if the wetland replication area detail might not be on that sheet anymore. I'm going to have to find a new home for it, I think.
Okay.
Because it's getting so big.
Well, thank you. So we'll continue this to the next meeting and circulate a draft order before then.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Make me the host of the meeting again.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to stop sharing. Thanks. Bert, did that come back to you?
Nope. So you have to, if you put your cursor over my screen and click the three little dots up there.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. Let me
it'll say
find you
make
here.
post. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we're opening a public hearing on a notice of intent for 34 Ash Street for the construction of a wetland crossing.
Is there someone here? Is this you, Greg?
It is, yes. Good evening, everyone. For the record, Greg Hockmuth from Williams and Sparagus, here presenting Pat Kelly for the notice of intent filed for 34 Ash Street. I think everybody knows where the Christmas tree farm is. Bert, if I could share, I just wanted to give just a brief history of,
Sure.
of the parcel.
You should be good.
All right. Let's see here. All right, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
So in 2005, Pat hired a company to put together an A&R plan to carve up her property into, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots. So we've got Lot E, Lot A, B, C, and D. Her house is located currently on Lot A, and the project that we filed a notice of intent for is on Lot D, which is down in the bottom right corner. But as everybody knows, it's driven down Ash Street. There's a roadside ditch that meets the definition of BVW. And the only way to get to, let's see, I guess 4 of the 5 lots is to cross over that ditch. When Pat approached us a couple of years ago, the thought was to try to utilize, there's a little white gate where the power company accesses the utility easement. And that's shown roughly in this location here. And the thought was to file a special permit application with the planning board for a common driveway to come in utilizing that existing access to get to lot B, C, and D. It just made sense. There was a crossing there, there was a culvert there. But what we quickly learned was a few things. The culvert's undersized. To meet the minimum width requirements in the planning board regs, we'd have to widen that crossing. And more importantly, there's the power company easement, which is located here. It's 200 feet wide. It encompasses the entire frontage of lots B and C, and that leaves lot D. Now you can propose driveways and even roadways and utilities within the utility, but you need permission from National Grid in this case. We reached out to them early in the process, probably about 6 or 7 months ago. And we got a call with a very nice gentleman about 3 months ago that said in not so many words, if you have another option, take it, because it's very, very difficult to get approval for what you're asking for within our easement. It's not a no, but it's going to take probably 6 to 8 months to permit. And you may find that after 6 to 8 months, the answer is still no, especially if you have another viable option. So knowing that the culvert was undersized, the driveway had to be widened anyways, it just made sense to propose it on lot D. But Pat does not want to sell lot C or B right now. There's plenty of Christmas trees there and she wants to continue to farm them for years down the road. But she does want to sell one of the lots, the lower lot, lot D. So that brings us to, let me just close this. I have to clear the annotation here. Can everybody see that other plan now?
Yeah.
All right, so this is just a 20 scale plan that we did of Lot D. This is the bottom right corner of the parcel, which I guess would be the easternmost portion of her property. The property to the right is the equestrian facility. And I'm going to zoom in on this here. So what we did is we delineated the BVW associated with the ditch. It's shown here as a C-series wetland. I believe Mary Rimmer had flagged this probably 10 years ago. I think Pat's been contemplating doing something out here for a long time. But what we just filed a special permit, not a special permit, a scenic wall application with the planning board to propose to break the wall here. And we also met with the tree warden on site last week to take a look at, there's a hickory tree right near where wetland flag C21 is. I requested the meeting with Wayne just to see his thoughts. I didn't want to put words in his mouth, but the whole, at least half of the root system of that hickory is undermined as a result of water flowing through that ditch. The tree is showing some stress, and we were trying to determine whether or not it was going to be deemed a high hazard tree. Wayne wasn't ready to make that decision, but what he did say I could say is that exactly what I told you. The tree's root system's undermined and the tree is showing signs of stress. And in other words, it's on its way to becoming a high hazard tree. There's a utility pole right next to the proposed driveway entrance with a transformer on it. And if that tree did fall, it would take out the wires and make a big mess. But our thought was to propose a driveway along the easternmost property boundary, make it wide enough that it would comply with the requirements for a common driveway that the planning board likes to see, show a common driveway grading and utility easement on Lot D, all in anticipation of a special permit application sometime down the road to propose a common driveway in this location to avoid 3 similar filings like you see here tonight. We did do drainage calculations. I didn't submit those yet, and we'll be able to show the commission why a 24-inch culvert's required. Most of the culverts under people's driveways within these ditches along Ash Street are 12 inches. Although they don't show signs of failure or significant ponding on the upgradient end of them, our calculations showed that it needed to be increased by double. It's a pretty big subcatchment. It goes all the way up to the top of the hill. You can see when you look into the Christmas tree farm. And that all flows down to this ditch. But the project itself, it's pretty straightforward. It would require the installation of 2 stone head walls, the placement of a 24-inch culvert, and then just lifting the grade up a little bit to get into the new driveway that's proposed. We'd recommend doing this work during dry months. This ditch stops flowing, usually every July, August, and September. But as a precaution, we're proposing a temporary sump on the upgradient side where we dig a small hole within the channel itself, put a pipe in, fill it with stone, and then put a hose in that would allow us to dewater around the proposed excavation effort if there was any water encountered, just to keep it dry during culvert placement. The work within that ditch should be buttoned up in a couple days max. And then once you get into the lot, out in the field portion of Lot D, there are some damp areas, and anybody that's driven by there looks in and sees some Christmas trees that don't look quite as well as the others. And I suspect the main reason for that is because it's pretty damp out in that field. There are some isolated wetlands in Lot D. They don't border on this ditch, so they're not jurisdictional. But what we are proposing is to keep the driveway as close to that stone wall on the east as we can. That's how they drive the tractors around now. It's slightly higher, it's drier, but we want to try to preserve as much of that tree buffer that runs along the wall between the horse field over here and the tree farm on Lot D. So that's it in a nutshell. If this was, I will say, if this was a driveway for just a single family house, it wouldn't be as wide as what we're proposing. But because it is anticipated that we will be filing a special permit application for a common driveway, we wanted to make it wide enough now so we didn't have to come back to the commission to do something different if and when those other two lots sell.
So you're saying that this would access lots B and C eventually, as well as lot C?
Yes, yes, but I will say if somebody decides that they do want to try to go down the road with National Grid and try to permit something within their easement, they can try. But based on my conversation with National Grid, it makes no sense to even go down that road right now. It sounded like it would be a 99% no. Unless we had no other options, and we clearly do. It doesn't look like this was discussed during the endorsement of the A&R plan in 2005. I'm not quite sure why, because what I've learned with the planning board that is in place now, before they're ready to sign off on any type of driveway or roadway that involves a wetland crossing, they want to see an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission first, just to make sure that it does in fact have adequate access or approved access. And maybe that wasn't the case back in '05. We don't have a file number yet. The website still says waiting for fee to clear revenue. But I imagine the commission will want to do a site walk anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of interested in the wet areas in addition to the street.
Yep. And I was, it was cold this morning, but I was out in the field, and there's, the conditions are fine to get an auger in the ground. So I don't think you'd need to wait for things to really thaw out. I think we're there.
I think it's supposed to warm up this weekend after the next couple of days too.
So Greg, would you be proposing to plant in kind if that hickory tree had to come down?
Yeah, we talked about that. I talked about that with the tree warden. You know, I said, you know, Pat would be more than willing to plant additional trees, and he had thought that we were talking about deforesting that entire field. The reality is the house would sit way back, and none of those trees that you see now would be proposed to be removed out in the field. And I can show you guys where the house is being proposed during the site visit. But the only tree proposed to be removed anywhere near the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction would be just that one hickory tree to gain access. And I will tell you, if you slide this driveway to the west, that whole frontage is lined with hickory trees. So it's this one just happened to fall in the middle of our driveway, but it's also the tree that's in the worst shape. So I do think it makes sense if you have to take one down to take this one down.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes, she would propose more trees if that's what the commission wanted.
Well, would the 28th work for a site walk?
That works for me. I don't go anywhere anymore.
Nor do I.
Who does?
All the people who are on their way to Florida for spring break.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yep, that's what-
8:30.
I'm
Eight
sorry,
thirty.
Judy?
Well, I didn't hear, did you say 8:30?
Yeah,
Okay.
that work for everybody?
Yep, that's good.
Greg, you're still sharing your screen,
Oh,
FYI.
Yep.
how's the schedule look? Hold on. Oh, thanks, Wendy.
Sure.
Long day. All right, Bert, I'm gonna give it back to you.
All right, thank you. Good.
We'll continue this to April 5th.
Yep, April 5th.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Greg.
Good night.
Next is a request for determination of applicability for 363 Main Street, site work to restore the car paste building.
Good afternoon or evening, I guess it is. I'm Dennis Hamill from GM2 Associates, representing the town of West Newbury in this case, for the 363 Main Street, which is what's known as the car post building, but the town prefers to call it the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Building. That's the new name, well, not the new name, but that's the name they want it to be known as. And just a brief thing, get started here. This is they're doing a historic renovation of the building. They got Spencer Sullivan and Volt's going to do prepare the plans to have this building renovated and fixed up and continue to be an historic building. So along with it, we're going to do some site work, obviously, to make things work and to improve the conditions some. What you see in front of you is the existing conditions and demolition plan. If you look on the Main Street side of the property, there's as you're probably aware of driving by this 100 times, there's a parking area out front of the building. And you see a flagpole, which looks like it's in a circle there, but that's actually the grass area and it's all pavement around it. So that's the first thing we're going to do is actually remove the pavement from that whole area. So as you'll see, once we get to the next sheet in a minute, that we're just proposing some walkways through there. So we're going to be removing a substantial amount of impervious area along that back section. And you also see the flagpole is within the right of way of Main Street. So we're going to have to move that flagpole back onto the property. And beyond that, you see down in the lower right-hand corner of the building, there's some shrubs and some rhododendrons and some small trees that were planted by the developer of Drake's Landing as part of a previous agreement with the planning board to kind of screen the abutter from the parking area to the rear, which is currently in the crushed stone or gravel condition. It's not pavement yet. It always has been proposed to be pavement, and it will be pavement when we're done. But those trees are going to be removed. The only reason they're being removed is that's the location of the tight tank here for the sewage, because there is no location for a septic system that can comply with current regulations. So in talking with the Board of Health, Paul Savigny, that the tight tank is really the only thing we can put there. And other than that, we get some overhead wires coming into the structure from Main Street. There's an existing water service coming in off of Main Street that kind of turns and runs into the building. And that's about it for utilities. There's something, you look on the upper right-hand corner of the building, there's something called an SMH. You see it, and it says cesspool. That's where the septic has been going for a number of years. That's going to be removed and filled in and basically removed. And then the excavation obviously will be filled in. So that's it for what we're doing for demolition to the thing. So Bert, if you could go to the grading sheet, which is the next sheet. Okay, now you can see what the developed site's going to look like. You can notice, first of all, on the right-hand side, the parking area that was gravel is now going to be paved. And you'll notice on the front towards Main Street, that whole parking area is gone. And you'll just see a walkway coming across the Main Street to access the rear of the building, which is going to be basically the main access in and out, but they're going to maintain the front access as a historic, doors and entrance to the site. It will be operable, but most of the traffic will be coming in from the rear of the building, going into the building. The flagpole on this plan shows it still being in the right of way, but on our site plan to the planning board, we're actually moving it back onto the property. Now, the wetlands associated with this property is on the other side of Daly Drive. If you remember during the approval process of Daly Drive and Drake's Landing, that the wetland, that whole area or portion of that area came into near where the parking area is for the to the rear that we're paving. So that all got filled in and during the construction of it. So now the wetland boundary is the base of the slope coming down off of Daly Drive. It doesn't really show up too clearly here, but there's a little dashed line that runs along the base of the slope, and that's the actual boundary of the wetlands, right at the base of the slope or the fill area. Now that wetland was replicated at a 2-to-1 up on by the pond, by the rear of the pond, further in into Drake's Landing, if you remember that during that process. So as you can see the tight tank on the lower bottom of the building. That's where that's going. And just above it, you'll see a dashed line that represents the 100-foot buffer zone from that wetland. So the tight tank will be totally outside of that buffer zone area. And all the grading for the parking area goes back to the right. And over there is a stormwater mitigation plan as part of the Drake's Landing project. So, and that was all designed for that to happen, during those calculations. So that's all part of that. So the rest of the site, once you get past that edge of the pavement of the driveway, drains basically back towards Main Street as it currently does. And we're substantially reducing, you can see the amount of impervious area. If you remember from the existing condition, there was that large parking area out front. So that's all being removed and just going to have the one walkway going through across and then one feeding the front of the building. So beyond that, to install that tight tank, we're maybe most likely going to be into the water table a little bit. So if you notice to the rear or to the lower right of the parking area, we have a temporary dewatering area. And that will discharge, from that with a hole to dig for that tight tank. And then that will flow overland into the stormwater system on the back of the parking lot. And then once the construction is done, that temporary dewatering area will be removed and regraded back to the original grades. Without getting into too much detail, the water service is going to remain. The water department has already determined that they're going to repair that. It's in it leaks apparently beyond the water shut off, so they're going to be replacing that prior to any construction going on with this building. And the overhead electric, what we discussed with the architects this morning was that they want to it's going to maintain the overhead for now, but they're going to put an underground trench and a pipe, just a conduit, to allow for underground electric in the future. But they don't, because of Main Street, we can't dig up Main Street because of the moratorium for the pavement. So we can't put that in right now. So they're going to just continue with the overhead wires for a few more years and then make that decision then if they decide they want to put that in, but they want to put the conduit in now so they'll have less disturbance, on the site at that point. The only other underground utility is a potential for a gas service. That gas service I'm showing to the lower left, is proposed. But again, the existing gas main is in Main Street and there's a moratorium for digging that up and making that attachment. So that's considered a future gas main. And then you'll see as it comes to the building, there's two little circles there. I'm sorry, I didn't label it here on the grading plan, but it is labeled on the site plan. Those are temporary propane tanks for fuel during the period of time when they don't have gas service. The selectmen have kind of jingled the bell a little bit and said they might want to just go totally electric here and not have any gas service whatsoever. So that would be something that the selectmen will have to decide at some point. So we're preparing to do that. So, but there's not going to be any trenching for that gas main, for the future. They're just going to, and if they need it, they'll put it in. If they don't need it, then it won't get put on. Again, that's all outside the buffer zone of the wetlands, the 100-foot buffer zone. So we're here tonight to ask for a determination of applicability, just due to the fact that the stormwater has already been managed by the Drake's Landing project for the parking area and the paved area. The rest of the land goes to Main Street and it doesn't even go towards the wetland. And the wetlands is separated by a road with curbing and its own stormwater system. That's already been approved by this commission when Drake's Landing went about. So so that's our plea for the request. And I guess I'll have any questions. You can talk now.
Any questions?
Were you proposing any kind of controls along the limit of work? Any kind of fencing or?
Well, if you look at the dotted line or dash line on the lower portion of the property, that is going to be an erosion control. Basically a silt sock going along that whole area there to control any runoff. The limit of work is basically that dashed line. I can't point it out, but if you look at it, it says limit of work right there. Yeah, so it runs all the way around the property where the work involved with this particular site's gonna end. So, if you look along where it meets Daily Drive, there's a sidewalk that runs along there already. We're just going to be butting the new pavement up to the back of the sidewalk. And so there'll be no interruption of Daily Drive whatsoever to do this. And if it doesn't quite show, but over to the right, I don't know if Bert, if you can slide that over a little, you can kind of see it just goes around the base of the basin because they got to do some grading at the base of the parking lot before it hits the stormwater management, which is known as that focal point right there at that corner of the drive parking area. So there is a silt sock running all along that, and then you got Daily Drive on the other side. But we're not proposing any fence in that direction.
And what kind of erosion control are you proposing?
That's going to be a silt sock, compost sock, 12-inch diameter compost sock. In the detail sheets, we do show that, the detail of that thing. I didn't really include it with this plan. But that most of that is, a lot of that is on the outside of the buffer zone, other than that one little stretch comes up along the right. And that's all part of the Drake's Landing stormwater project. So the flows are very obviously very small because this is a tiny watershed going in basically two different directions.
And the paving material that you're removing will be disposed of off-site?
Yes, it will be. As well as any of the material removed for that cesspool thing that has to be dug out, and that will all be removed off-site, yes, to a site suitable for those type of materials.
Are you using a permeable paving product, or is it regular asphalt?
This is regular asphalt. And again, the asphalt for the parking area, that's all included in the Drake's Landing stormwater management project.
And how big is the tight tank? Is it a standard or is it oversized or?
I discussed that with Paul Savigny and the Board of Health, and
Yeah.
we came up with, sizing it is difficult because we don't know how many people are going to be in here using it. But we kind of went on a practical matter. The minimum size tank is 2,000 gallons. But that would, require, and with the flows that we calculated that could be in this building, that would be substantially less than the 2,000. Now, to size these tight tanks, you got to take your estimated flow and multiply it times 5. And that would be the size of the tank. But we kind of went on a more of a practical matter. And what I have shown here is a 3,500 gallon tank.
Okay.
And what that does is we got to put alarms in there at 3/5 of the volume of that tank. So that ends up being roughly just under 2,500 gallons. And a truck takes 2,500 gallons. So that's how we kind of came up with the size of this tank. So that should hold quite a long time before they have to pump.
Any other questions?
Is there a plan to replace any of the shrubs that you're taking out as
There is a planting plan for a few more. We're putting, we got to be careful we put things, obviously, because we got that tank. But there's going to be 3 arborvitaes going to be placed in that area of the tank, but it can't be obviously it can't be a larger tree that would overhang the tank, so they can't access it. And you got the electrical connection there as well to control the floats, which will give you the alarm. So there's 3 arborvitaes that are going to be planted there. And the intent of that is to more or less to screen the abutter from people coming and going out of the parking lot, in an evening or nighttime situation, which probably won't happen too much. But that's what we're doing 2 there. And there's going to be a shrub, actually a small tree planted up on the corner. Doesn't show it on this plan. We have a landscaping plan. If the commission wants that, I can certainly provide that to them. But see where the walkway that goes from the front parking lot and it takes that sharp left-hand turn, right between there and the parking area on the top is where there's going to be planted some type of, there's an evergreen tree being planted there. And there's going to be a specimen tree planted along, you can see the front walkway that goes to the front of the building. There's that's going to be bluestone. And on the part where it meets the bituminous parkway, there's going to be a tree planted there, a large tree, but a tree. I think they said, I forget the name of the tree, but it was kind of a specimen kind of tree. It's going to be deciduous, so it'll come and go with the seasons. But so those 2 trees plus the 3 arborvitaes what we're replacing those other trees with. And those trees are new; they're not old trees. They were just recently, within the last year or 2, from Drake's Landing. They're the ones who planted those trees there. But generally, other than that, the site is going to be maintained as a lawn, just to keep it clean.
Okay.
Molly, are you in a butter to this project?
No.
I don't share a boundary, but I'm within 300 feet, I think. So I did get a notice.
Okay. I'll move that we issue a negative determination for the project as proposed, given the nature of the work and the roadway between any work and the wetlands. Condition with the conditions that any paving materials or materials from the cesspool removal will be disposed of off-site. Silt sock, 12-inch silt sock will be installed and inspected, approved by will be installed as shown on the plan, and will be inspected and approved by the agent prior to any other work. And that's
Second.
any further discussion?
Nope.
Dawn,
Aye.
Molly?
I don't know if I should vote. If I,
Okay, so you.
I'll just abstain.
Abstain. Yep.
Wendy,
Aye.
Tom there?
Yeah, I'm here. Aye.
Judy, aye.
Okay.
Dennis, I have one question on your aerial view plan that you sent.
Yes.
What you've got marked as town hall is actually the town office building.
Yes, that's correct. I'm sorry for that error.
And on the other side, there's a town of West, it says, it should be Newbury right of way. You have a T instead of an R.
Okay, sorry.
For your information.
I'm not known for my spelling, so.
Nor am I, but
Okay, well, thank you very much.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Next on the agenda is a request for a certificate of compliance for 25 Coffin Street.
So this is what was on the agenda last week, and the partial certificate was issued, and now they're back looking for a full certificate of compliance.
Okay.
That as-built that was submitted.
So what happened with the trees?
So they have done 28 new plantings out there in the time since our last meeting.
Wow.
In the winter? I mean, is it a good time for planting?
I guess when I talked to the homeowners, the people at New England Wetland Plants said it would be okay. The plants are dormant right now in the winter.
Okay.
All the snow that was in the area had melted. So there's 28 new plantings in there. We was able to go out and identify some of the old plantings. There was 10 to 15, I'd say closer to 15 dogwoods that were there. And now there's the 28 additional plantings in.
Okay.
The permanent markers are all MSVs,
Those red
those red there.
boys,
Yeah.
okay.
Hey, good evening. I'm Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Just I wanted to supplement what Bert said. I met with Bert on site. I was able to find, as Bert said, about 15 dogwoods that were pretty clearly planted. You can tell the New England wetland plant dogwoods because of the way they prune them when they're young. So they maintain a center pruned chunk and they grow out from that because they start off as tubulings. That's kind of a growth pattern they have. If I had spent a lot more time, I probably could have found some more. But what we were hoping was that by putting in these plants, and it is as long as you can work the soil, you can plant in the winter. And we only have a few more frozen nights left. The biggest danger is that they would frost heave out of the ground. So that's why you tend not to plant after you start getting frost. In the fall, spring, they're not going to frost heave out. We're not going to have enough freeze thaw action for that. So what we were hoping is, we would demonstrate good faith by replanting more than the original commitment. We have about 15 or more that have survived and are doing really well. So we really only need a third of what went in to survive in order to meet the commitment of plantings under the permit. So we're hoping that demonstration of additional plantings is enough to have the commission issue a full certificate so that the property can transfer cleanly to the new owner. The posts have all been verified to be exactly in the places shown in the permit plan.
So weren't there supposed to be some trees planted?
There were some trees planted, and I don't know if there were trees in the new 28. Cassie, were there any saplings in that bunch?
There's 5 more red maple trees.
Okay, so we added 5. I think there was, I did find some willow saplings that looked like they were planted originally, and I think there were some red maples that were put in originally, and I think a couple of them did die in the first planting. Is that right, Cassie?
Yes.
Yeah. So there were some red maples that went in originally. The problem is 4 or 5 years later, going and finding which red maple sapling that's there was planted versus not is a little tougher. With the dogwoods, it's easy because of the pruning pattern. I can tell which ones were planted, but the maples aren't grown from tubulings, so it's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, we have more trees in the ground between the original planting and what we've added to try to, essentially overdo it on plantings to try to get a clean decision. We got plenty of vegetation that's gone in there. And I don't know if you remember what the site looked like originally, but it was a rat's nest of bittersweet and other invasives. So it's certainly a big improvement over what was there when the did.
And how would you describe the overall area? Is it well vegetated?
The overall area is vegetated with very little invasives left. I mean, when we were there, I pulled a small bittersweet vine out of the ground. I mean, there will forever be seed stock. There is still a grass growth in that area, but there's also the new shrubs. And then the posts are in place. So there's no bare soil.
Okay.
Well, based on the submission of the as-built and the new plantings, I move that we issue a certificate of compliance for 25 Coffin Street.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'm just a little concerned about, we're not going to be able to have a chance to make sure these trees take. And I understand you planted way more than you needed, but and I guess at this point, there's really no provision that we can, attach to make sure that the trees take. So
I guess I would say that we were able to, and I didn't do an exhaustive look. It was about 15 minutes. I found about 15 of those dogwoods that have gone in, and they all survived really well. And there are a bunch of dogwoods that went in out of that 28. So I'm 100% confident you're going to have those dogwoods surviving because the last planting did really well in that. So you're going to end up with over 30 native plantings when I think the original commitment was 24.
So what other species were planted besides the red maples and the dogwood?
There was some willow, but there's a willow that was down, and I think we did some cuttings from those originally, and we also there were red maples that were planted originally. Cassie, what else did you did? 5?
We did some blueberry bush and 5 sugar spice or sugar rush or some name like that.
Spice bush, maybe?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. The other thing is the dogwoods are really what you need there, and the willows, because you need something that's aggressive. These intermittent kind of channels that form off of essentially off of roadside swales and all that, they tend to carry a lot of seed stock, and having the dogwoods and the willows there, they're nice aggressive natives that can kind of fight back over time against the repopulation with invasives.
Could a list of the plants that were put in be provided to the commission just so we can keep it in the file?
Bert has it.
He does. Okay, great. Thank you.
Any more questions?
John,
Aye.
Wendy,
Aye.
Molly,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Judy, aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Next is a discussion of the Wetlands Protection Bylaw.
We had 2 votes for it.
Yeah, that was nice to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other business?
I had a question, Bert, on the Google Drive. I opened it up, but I have enough of my own Google Drive so that I'm going to have to buy more memory. I don't know if anybody else had that problem.
I opened it.
Yeah.
All right, I'll try to figure that out. There was a bunch of stuff to email for this meeting. So
Yeah.
It might be easier to just put it in Google Drive and send 3-4 emails full of stuff.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. I'm having the same problem with Dropbox, like on the planning board. I mean, because you only have a 3 gigabyte limit. So.
Why don't I just I could give you and I could give everyone else I made a separate Google account for this drive, so I could just give you the login for that, and then you could just log right into it.
Okay.
And then you wouldn't be taking up space on your own drive.
Okay.
So,
Review of the minutes. People had an opportunity to review the minutes from, what was the date?
it was the last meeting, right?
Yeah.
So
The one that we just got.
March 1st?
March 8th?
Oh, no, March 1st.
March
I'm sorry.
1st.
March 1st. I haven't got to the executive session minutes. I'm going to get to that this week. So,
So, but Alyssa sent around the minutes other than executive session? Have people had an opportunity to review them?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I move that we accept the minutes of March 1st as revised.
Second.
Any further discussion? Dawn,
Aye.
Wendy,
Aye.
Molly,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Judy, aye. That is it.
Hooray.
I just want to put the bug out that we need to find somebody to replace me on the Conservation Commission. So if anybody, knows of anybody that is interested or would be good, might be good to have some overlap. So just putting it out there.
You could do both.
I don't think I can.
There's nothing preventing it, right? I think the only position in town that would have that conflict is what, Finance Committee, right?
Oh, I just assumed that I had to step down from everything. I think maybe I want to step down. I don't know.
Yeah. The selectman's like a
full-time job.
Yeah, it's like a full-time. It's 40 hours a week. If you do
Yeah.
it right, it's definitely 25 plus hours a week. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. All right, so I guess I'm on my own too. Well, I don't really have to find somebody to replace me, right? Isn't that up to
You
guys?
do.
So Molly, would you be interested in being the Open Space Committee liaison? Because that's the other thing. Or is that weird?
Yeah, I don't know if Brad's staying on it. I don't know if I want to
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He doesn't want to be
double
on
up.
I'll
Yeah.
give that a shot.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Hey.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Bye.
All right. Good night.